Hello, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to BBC News. 2 years after the Brexit referendum, thousands of people are protesting in central London to demand what they call a people's vote on the outcome of the negotiations with the EU. We'll be going live to our correspondent in central London in just a moment to hear more about the march. A few thousand people are also demonstrating in the capital in support of a no-deal Brexit in what they're calling the UK Unity and Freedom March. It all comes as the German engineering firm Siemens, which employs 15,000 people in the UK, called on the government to remain closely aligned with the single market. Senior cabinet ministers have again said the UK is prepared to walk away from the negotiations rather than accept a bad deal. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley reports.
2 years to the day since the Brexit vote, visions of the future are still very different. Campaigners in central London today calling for a vote on any final deal the government reaches with Brussels.
There's been 2 years since the referendum. The government's no clearer about what it wants. It's internally divided, let alone in argument with the European Union. The country is very likely to end up in a bad place. We've got to stop the mess, and the best way of doing it is that when we know what the outcome is, that the public have the final say.
Businesses are expressing views too. Yesterday, Airbus said it will reconsider its future in the UK if there's no deal. BMW called for more clarity. And today there was this reaction to Boris Johnson's call for a full British Brexit.
It's time to get away from slogans, full British Brexit, going into combat with Europe. It's all incredibly unhelpful, and what we need to do now is to get closer with our European partners and work out what a realistic, pragmatic Brexit is.
The Foreign Secretary says the government needs to get on with it and avoid a deal that's soft, yielding and infinitely long. Others say to get that, the PM must be prepared to walk away if she doesn't get the right deal.
The Prime Minister has always said that nothing is agreed until everything's agreed, and that no deal would be better than a bad deal. And I think it's essential, as we enter the next phase of the negotiations, that the European Union understands that and believes it.
Labour says no deal would be catastrophic. And as campaigners say the electorate should make the final decision, a reminder, if ever one was needed, that different people see Brexit very differently. Nick Eardley, BBC News.
And we can go now to our correspondent John Donnison, who's in central London, keeping an eye on the march for us, the People's Vote March. The speech is underway, John. Give us a sense of what's being said.
Well, it's absolutely packed here in Parliament Square. The organisers are saying they think there's at least 100,000 people here. I'd say certainly in the tens of thousands, and that would make it the biggest anti-Brexit march since the referendum 2 years ago. Now, Britain due to leave the European Union in 9 months' time, but the people here say it's not a done deal. That's one of the slogans we're hearing. Now, I've got Eloise Todd here from Best for Britain, the CEO of Best for Britain. You've supported this march today. Yeah. What do you want?
We absolutely need a people's vote. It shouldn't be for the politicians to decide the biggest decision of our generation, and that's what we're demanding here today, and that's what we should get.
A people's vote, another referendum.
It would be the first time that we're looking at what Brexit actually means. I mean, after 2 years, the Cabinet haven't even decided.
Yeah, but just to be clear on that, I mean, people's vote, that means another referendum, not the same referendum again, but another one.
It is a form of vote that goes to everybody, so yeah, but basically it's really important to understand that it is the first time that people will be looking at what deal the government brings back and what our current terms are. And the only benefit of this process has basically been we're starting to have the kind of conversation that we should have had 2 years ago. What does it actually mean for people? With Airbus yesterday, there's 14,000 families waking up knowing that their future is now compromised. So we need to understand how much of that is going to go on and whether that's really the right path for our future.
The other side would say, look, there was a vote, there were months and months of discussion in the lead up to the referendum, and it was close, but the 48% lost.
I would say that number needs an update. We've had a poll this week that showed 53% of people wanting to stay in now. And that's without either of the political main parties having a line to stay in. People of this country are not daft. They can see what's going on. They're understanding that their future is being compromised. And we say the only thing that's fair is what the people started, the people need to end. And if anyone's a big fan of the will of the people, bring it on. What's to be scared of? May the best deal win.
Eloise, Todd, we've got to leave it there for the moment. I'll let you get back to the rally. A couple more hours of speeches, I think, here, but certainly a pretty lively afternoon here in Parliament Square in central London.
OK, John, thank you very much. John Donnison reporting. And let's just take a look, actually, at one of the speeches now. Sir Vince Cable, the Lib Dem leader, addressing the crowd. He's just told the crowd, we will stop Brexit.
It's a very simple one. Keep fighting, keep hoping, we will win. Thank you very much.
Well, that was spot on timing, wasn't it? We just caught him saying thank you very much to the crowd. But we will, of course, bring you much more from that rally throughout the afternoon. Well, with me now here in the studio is the Conservative MP and Leave supporter Crispin Blunt. A very good afternoon, to you. So Liam Fox saying on behalf of the government that the PM isn't bluffing over walking away without a deal. Is that the right sort of message, do you think, that the government should be sending out at this point, on this second anniversary of the vote?
I think it's entirely right. When I chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee in the last Parliament, we had a look at the implications of no deal and were absolutely clear that no deal has to be planned for. We don't have control over these negotiations. There are two sides, the European Commission and the European states behind it, and ourselves. And then, of course, any agreement they came to could be vetoed by the European Parliament. So the only responsible thing to do is to plan for no deal. But of course, no deal being the worst outcome of the negotiations would then flush out all the issues that would then release all the implications for our European Union partners. If there is no deal, it's bad for the United Kingdom, but it is even worse in absolute terms for our European Union partners. It's positively catastrophic for the Republic of Ireland, and 1 million jobs will be lost with our partners if that's what happens. Now, what we by not making clear what no deal means we haven't actually released all the real interests on the other side of the negotiating table, who need to impress upon the people who are negotiating for the European Union that they're the real interests of Europeans in a proper, sensible, forward-looking free trading arrangement with the United Kingdom that's absolutely in their interest.
But if the government holds out this threat or possibility of a no deal, whatever way you want to look at it, isn't that in the meantime potentially going to do a lot of damage to the British economy? We've heard from Airbus yesterday, we've heard from Siemens today. Businesses that need to do considerable forward planning, if they don't have clarity and if there is this threat of no deal, then surely ultimately that's worse for the economy.
No, of course, that's entirely correct. No deal is in no one's interests. Everybody loses. And the conclusion my committee came to when we looked at this in great detail was that the absolute damage to the 27 nations of the European was much greater than it was to the UK, but the relative damage to the UK would be greater than to the EU. So if we manage to get to a place where we do not get an agreement, everybody loses.
Was it the will, if I can interrupt you, was it the will of the people who voted to leave that Britain do so without a deal? Do you really think that the people who voted to leave thought that was a possible scenario?
These issues were all brought out in the referendum campaign. And indeed, much of the Remain campaign was premised on the fact that there would be no deal, that there would be an instant recession because of the implications that might rise from it. And so to then say people didn't know, campaign fear during the referendum campaign made absolutely clear what might happen to the United Kingdom if the people had the temerity to vote for Brexit. They still voted for Brexit because they had probably a good understanding of their interests, and in particular, the long-term interests of the United Kingdom. And we must remember, this is a decision for decades to come. That decision was taken 2 years ago today, and now we've got to get on with implementing it.
We heard one of the marchers just a moment ago at the People's Vote rally say, let's put this to the vote again, may the best deal win. Do you think if there was a second vote, that the Leave side would win again, given that, over the course of the last 2 years, lots of, there were known unknowns, weren't there, in the campaign? Lots of unknowns as well have emerged.
No, I know there are obviously people who are very enthusiastic about the European Union who are demonstrating today, for whom this was, in a sense, a very emotional event, losing that referendum. But the majority view in the country, first of all, was to leave. And since then, people have said, well, we just need to get on with this now and get it done. And the decision has been taken. The implications were debated over during the referendum campaign. And now we've got to make sure that we get the best possible deal in our interest, but particularly in the interests of the nations of the 27. And we've got to get beyond the place where the European Union negotiators are defending the institution of the European Union and punishing the British for having a temerity to leave, and actually start representing the real interests of all those people in the European Union who sell their goods to the United Kingdom.
OK, Crispin Blunt MP, thank you very much for your time today. And remember, you can keep up to date with every twist and turn of the Brexit negotiations and the political ramifications by going to bbc.co.uk/politics.